Welcome to the Deep Dive Review for Environmental Health. This video will review the concepts of chapters 5 through 8 in the textbook, Essentials of Environmental Health by Dr. Robert H. Friis, 2019. Chapter 5. Zoonotic and Vector-Borne Diseases. Examples of disease vectors are A. Rats and mice, B. Mosquitoes, C. Ticks, D. Sandflies, or E. All of these are correct. E. All of these are correct. A vector is defined as an insect or any living carrier that transports an infectious agent from an infected individual or its wastes to a susceptible individual or its food or immediate surroundings. Vectors include various species of rodents, like rats and mice and arthropods, such as mosquitoes, ticks, sandflies, and biting midges. This is found on page 98 in the textbook. The causative agent for malaria is a type of A. Bacterium, B. Virus, C. Rickettsial agent, D. Protozoa, or E. Prion. D. Protozoa. Originally, it was believed that malaria originated from the dank atmosphere around swamps. Now it is known that malaria is transmitted by mosquitoes that carry a unicellular parasite known as a plasmodium. This is found on page 100 in the textbook. Methods for transmission of zoonotic pathogens include A. Contact with the skin, B. Bite or scratch of an animal, C. Direct inhalation, D. Ingestion of contaminated foods, or E. All of these are correct. E. All of these are correct. Contact with the skin, the bite or scratch of an animal, direct inhalation or ingestion, such as eating contaminated food like infected meat, or the bite of an arthropod vector, are some of the methods for the transmission of zoonotic pathogens. This is found on page 98 of the textbook. Which of the following statements about zoonotic diseases is most likely to be true? A. Immunocompromised persons may be at reduced risk for morbidity from zoonotic diseases. B. Children younger than 5 years old may be at reduced risk for morbidity from zoonotic diseases. C. An animal infected with a zoonotic agent may be free from symptoms. D. A zoonotic disease is always associated with transmission by a vector. Or E. None of these is correct. C. An animal infected with a zoonotic agent may be free from symptoms. Conceptions of zoonotic agents may also include pathogens that cause disease in a non-human host, or situations in which an infected animal remains free from symptoms of the disease. This is found on page 98 of the textbook. Chapter 6. Toxic metals and elements. Bioaccumulation, or biomagnification, of heavy metals is a particular hazard associated with which of the following? A. Iron, B. Mercury, C. Copper, D. Manganese, or E. None of these is correct. B. Mercury. Major toxic metals are toxic at low concentrations, but they also have the capacity to bioaccumulate. This is sometimes called biomagnification, which means that they become more concentrated and potentially more harmful as they move up the food chain. For example, mercury may be ingested by fish from particles suspended in the water, and then ingested by humans who capture and eat the fish. This is found on page 131 of the textbook. Which of the following statements about heavy metals is true? A. Their specific gravity exceeds that of water by 5 or more times. B. None of them is necessary to sustain life. C. All of them are toxic, even at trace levels. D. All of these are correct. Or E. None of these are correct. A. Their specific gravity exceeds that of water by 5 or more times. A heavy metal is one that has a high atomic weight with a specific gravity that exceeds that of water by 5 or more times. This is found on page 130, one of the textbook. Which of the following metals is not classified as a major toxic metal with multiple effects? A. Arsenic. B. Beryllium. C. Chromium. D. Mercury. Or E. Silver.
E. Silver.
The metals in the group known as major toxic metals with multiple effects include arsenic, beryllium, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, and nickel. This is found on page. Possible methods for exposure to metals include which of the following? A. Inhalation of dusts. B. Inhalation of metal fumes. C. Skin contact with dusts. D. Ingestion. Or E. All of these are correct. E. All of these are correct. There are several possible modes of exposure to metals, corresponding to the human portals and sites of entry that come into contact with the metals. The portals and sites include the lungs, through inhalation of dusts, metal fumes, and vapors. Skin, through contact with dusts. And the mouth, by ingestion. This is found on pages 131 through 132 of the textbook. Chapter 7. Pesticides and Other Organic Chemicals.
Pesticides are
A. Always highly toxic to humans. B. All synthetic chemicals. C. Always the best weapon against insect pests. D. All of these are correct. Or E. None of these are correct. E. None of these are correct. Hazardous chemicals, omnipresent in the environment, are vital to society, yet simultaneously raise the specter of potential harm to all living organisms on Earth. Learn more about this starting on page 153 of the textbook. As with nerve gases, which type of pesticides act on the nervous system of insects and higher organisms by disrupting the transmission of nerve impulses? A. Organophosphates. B. Carbamates. C. Organochlorines. D. Pyrethrins. Or E. None of these is correct. A. Organophosphates. Organophosphate pesticides are related to nerve gases, such as sarin, soman, and tubun. This can be found on page 160 of the textbook. One of the concerns that surrounded the use of Agent Orange was that it A. Contained very small amounts of dioxin. B. Was not effective because it evaporated rapidly. C. Was a major cause of night blindness. D. Was transported home on the clothing of military personnel. Or E. All of these are correct. A. It contained very small amounts of dioxin. Of particular concern was the fact that Agent Orange contained very small amounts of dioxins that originated from the manufacture of the herbicide. This can be found on page 166 in the textbook. DDT has been found to A. Cause frequent cases of acute toxicity among exterminators. B. Accumulate in the tissues of many animals. C. Cause a significant number of accidental deaths. D. Persist in the environment. Or E. Both accumulate in the tissues of many animals and persist in the environment. E. Both accumulate in the tissues of many animals and persist in the environment. DDT is a highly stable chemical that persists in the environment. It has the ability to become concentrated in the adipose, or fatty, tissues of the body, and it has an estimated half-life of approximately 10 years. So persistent and widespread is contamination of the environment with DDT, all living organisms on Earth contain some levels of this pesticide. Chapter 8. Ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Which of the following is a measure of the absorbed dose of radiation? A. the Curie or becquerel, B, the rad or gray, C, the rem or sievert, D, the Roentgen or Coulomb per kilogram, or E. None of these is correct. B, the rad or gray. Definitions of the International System of Units, SI units, and their equivalency in common units. Gray corresponds to the absorbed dose. It is the SI unit of absorbed dose. 1 gray is equal to 100 rad, and 1 centigray is equal to 0.01 gray. The term mrad stands for A. 1/1,000,000th of a rad, B. 1/1,000th of a rad, C. 1,000 rad, D. 1/100th of a rad, or E. 1,000,000 rad. B. 1/1,000th of a rad. When these prefixes are applied to a rad, an mrad is 1/1,000th of a rad. This can be found on page 186 in the textbook. Which of the following forms of radiation can penetrate up to a 2-centimeter layer of skin tissue? A. Alpha particles, B. Beta particles, C. Gamma rays, D. X-rays, or E. None of these is correct. B. Beta particles. Alpha particles lack the energy to penetrate even the outer layer of skin. Beta particles are more penetrating than alpha particles, but less damaging to living tissue and DNA because the ionizations they produce are more widely spaced. Gamma rays have so much penetrating power that several inches of a dense material like lead or even a few feet of concrete may be required to stop them. Gamma rays can pass completely through the human body. X-rays are similar to gamma rays in that they are photons of pure energy. X-rays are emitted from processes outside the nucleus, but gamma rays originate inside the nucleus. They also are generally lower in energy and therefore less penetrating than gamma rays. This is found on pages 183 through 184 in the textbook. The amount of exposure to radiation that a person receives is not affected by which of the following? A. Total time of exposure. B. Distance from the source. C. Degree of radioactivity of the material. D. Size or weight of the radioactive source. Or E. None of these is correct. D. Size or weight of the radioactive source. Factors that govern the amount of exposure to radiation that a person receives, or the dose delivered, include the total amount of time exposed to the radioactive source, the distance from the radioactive source, and the degree of radioactivity, the rate of emission of radioactive material. This is found on page 187 of the textbook. This concludes the deep dive review of concepts for chapters 5 through 8 in Essentials of Environmental Health, 3rd edition by Dr. Robert H. Friis. You learned about zoonotic and vector-borne diseases, toxic metals and elements, pesticides and other organic chemicals, and ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Thank you for studying with me.
See you next time.